Also, I wanted to add the Native Americans that some of the Native Americans also include in California the Chumash Indians. Now, the Chumash were discovered by the Spanish, who came like Rocky, Nunez de Balboa, Nunez de Balboa, who came from the Pacific Ocean, from Asia. They were part of the Gold Rush too in San Francisco. Now, the other Indians in California included those, and what happened there was Asians, miners, gold miners, who were mining for gold in the Sacramento Valley, and the Gold Rush in the Russian River Valley came, and they discovered these Chumash Indians. And there were the Great Lakes Indians too. Other Indians included the Huron Indians, the Ili Indians. They were in Kansas, the Kansa Indians. Coronado, the Spanish explorer, rode on a horse into present-day Kansas, European, and he discovered these Kansa Indians. The Iowa Indians were in Iowa, and the Buttes of Montana had some Indians that were northern Midwestern Indians too. And I wanted to add that Alaska, the Tlingits, were a part of the Northwest. The Athabascan Indians, by the way, the Navajos were Athabascans too. The Athabascans were from Washington State, and Chief Seattle, who Seattle, Washington is named after, was in Washington. Chief Seattle was a Native American Indian who explored the Pacific Northwest into Vancouver and British Columbia. And so what happened there was Chief Seattle was an Indian. And also I wanted to say, in Alaska, they had the Inuits. When we think of Eskimos, last month was Christmas. Well, that's not what it was. They lived in igloos. We think of last month Christmas and these parka things that they wore. They hunted polar bears, they hunted walruses, they hunted beavers, yes, they did. They hunted moose, elk, caribou, reindeer. No, not like Santa Claus and Rudolph. Although they're a part, I guess you could say they're a part of Alaska, the North Pole, and Christmas has its place in Alaska. But no, Santa Claus was actually from the King of England and the King of Spain, the King in Europe, Louis, France, had Santa Claus in history, and the kings and queens. But yeah, that's sort of Indians, part of Indians. But Santa Claus, I guess, is the history of Santa Claus, comes from the Europeans, but Alaska, and the Eskimos and Inuits. And these are the northern tribes that live in igloos. So, Alaska and the Klondike Borealis and Nome, Alaska was actually explored by Russians. Of course, I was talking about in the first video, the Bering Strait at the very beginning, which Native Americans came from Asia, China, I didn't mention this, Mongolia, Russia, and they went on the Bering Strait Bridge into the Bering Strait, and they crossed a bridge, migrated into North America, Canada. But no, Alaska has rivers, they have streams, they have big, humongous, like the Columbia River from Oregon from Portland goes, the mouth of the Columbia River goes into almost Canada. So the Alaska also has totem poles. They have eagles, they have moose, they have Soldotna, Alaska with fish. They have salmon, they have pink salmon, they have polar bears, they have bears, grizzlies. The Kodiak Island had Native Americans that hunted bear on the island in the river with waves, and what they had was rushing rivers. They had waterfalls, like you see in the picture, like the store, the quote Orvis. They had bears that catch salmon with the river, like the Disney movie, like The Lion King, the little big bear or whatnot. Yeah, you see that image. That happened in real life. Yes, I mean that happens in Alaska. They have fur coats in Alaska. When you think of Alaska, you think of sliding rocks. We have snow. We had snow the other day. Yesterday, a big snowstorm here in Winston-Salem. Just think of that. Alaska has snow. It has schools. People it stays dark, light after night, and then it goes dark, and you think of people with fur coats, and you think of Alaskan villages. You think of snow hares, yes, and musk oxen, which are like yaks. They have horns with blubber. They go up the mountains. You think of snow, but yes, all of these Inuit, Eskimo, Tlingit people hunt these. They still do today. Alaska's filled with dark-skinned, Asian-looking Eskimo Inuits with big boots, really heavy coats, because it's so cold there, And you see aurora lights, green, red, yellow, all these colors, blue, purple, all the rainbow colors of the North Pole sky, orange. Yes, and in Alaska, they have Russians, some Russian people. They have Orthodox churches. They have all this stuff. So Alaska has the Russian people. Ivan the Terrible was one of the first people, they say. Ivan IV, King Ivan IV of Russia, and Peter the Great explored Russia during the Alaska, when the Alaska became a state in the United States. The capital of Alaska is Anchorage. So, native people live in. You have the Klamath Indians. They're another tribe in south, and then you have the fir trees. You have big fir trees. You have eagles. I named all of it. Skiing in Alaska. Yes, you have trains, tourists. You have people, like the biggest mountain in the whole United States is in Denali National Park, and that is Mount McKinley. Okay, native Inuits were in Mount McKinley, and you have beluga whales, and you have whales. They are whalers. Have you ever heard of the TV movie from way back in the 60s called Nanook of the North? That was about the Inuits. They have harpoons. No, they don't have penguins. That's in Antarctica. Although they might have some penguins. But they have polar bears in Alaska. They have seals. They have walruses, etc. So, and Inuits hunt all of that. If they have penguins, they may have encountered a penguin or two. It's possible. But, yeah. And they have icebergs. They have cruise ships. They have Dall sheep. Yes, Alaska has Mount McKinley, and Denali has Dall sheep. They are like yaks. They're like mountain goats, sort of. They're like bighorn sheep in Colorado. But yes, Inuits hunt them too. And they have little beavers in Alaska. They have gophers. They have all this stuff, we know. And Alaska is all about going into rustic lodges, seeing moose and hung on the wall, and deer and elk and caribou and reindeer. That's what it's all about. They have big, giant antlers. And yes, don't think of Rudolph. But yeah, Donner's antlers are as big as a whitetail's. They have some of that too, yes. But not like Santa Claus. They don't have red noses like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. No, they don't have that. But here's what I will say. Inuits came from Russian explorers that came from Russia and Greenland. Let me talk about Native Americans and Vikings, okay, while I'm on it. Vikings encountered Native Americans. Leif Erikson and Eric the Red supposedly encountered Native Americans in present-day, where I say Greenville and Iceland. So that was Nordic explorers from Europe, like Norway and Norwegian, and they came from Norway. They encountered trolls, and in Denmark they were Danish and stuff like that, and they were not like the Minnesota Vikings with horns, but they may have. But Leif Erikson, they didn't have pigtails, but they may have though. Leif Erikson came on a Viking ship that he built out of wood and went, and like the movie Beowulf or whatnot, you've seen that from a decade or more ago. And so the Native Americans were there already in Greenland, and he came over and landed when he docked his ship in the cold, icy wind and the choppy seas, in Baffin Bay or wherever, Baffin Island, came over into Greenland, and it's not a continent, it's that big island with ice on the top of the earth, in Iceland, in Reykjavik. He encountered Native Americans. And so, that's the northern history. And then you had Alberta, you had Canada, you still have the Canadian First Peoples, and the Tlingits. So now, moving on to what now Mexico. I've talked a little bit about Mexico, and further south you had Peru, you had the Incas, the Mayans, and then the Olmecs. But then you had Hernan Cortez, who was a Aztec explorer from Spain. And again, there were pirates in Mexico, and buccaneers came from the Caribbean, and the old Hernan Cortez and the Incas. And what they did was, the buccaneers encountered the natives. And so if you go further south, you had the Mosquito Indians. You had a pirates attack, Bartholomew Roberts. You had Leoanus. He was a pirate in Panama. You had Sir Henry Morgan, Sir John Hawkins, yes, Sir Francis Drake. They all encountered the Mosquito people. And you had Black Bart, and you had Henry Avery and Calico Jack Rackham and Anne Bonny and Mary Read, the pirates, all come to Panama, to the Panama Canal region, and attack these mosquitoes as they were using force back. They were using weapons. They had the pirates had their pistols, their flintlocks. They went into the woods, into the forest, into the beach, onto the beach, into the jungles, and the junglemen were there too, some slaves. And so the Mosquito Indians, Native Americans, attacked all the pirates, and the pirates evidently won. And so the Mosquito Indians had these real tall, colorful headdresses, and then they hunted with their bows and arrows the pirates that came in, and they sacked this village of the this whole continent filled with Mosquito Indians, mosquitoes, not like that bite you. But that was early. That was closer to a little after Christopher Columbus. But all the pirates that I named came to Panama, to the isthmus of Panama from England, from the Caribbean, as they previously were from England, from London, and from and then they attacked these native villages. The pirates did. The pirates went to the Windward Passage. They were in the Caribbean already, but they went further south until present-day Latin America in the 1700s, and that's when they attacked them all. So, the pirates came from England. They were born in Bristol. Some were born in Bristol. Some were born in Scotland. Some were born in the Glasgow. Some of them, they all had their histories. They were all from England, and they had royals. They were ruled by King Louis the 16th of France. They were who was also a part of the Palace of Versailles in France. He was the Sun King, Louis the 16th. They came, and then what happened was they were in castles. They were in palaces. They had their ships. They had ships. They were looters. They were under lords proprietors. They came to the Carolinas. They came to Florida. They were buccaneers. They lived in Tampa. Some lived in Tampa, and some of them were in the Tampa Bay area. The buccaneers, like Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but yeah, they were. And also, I wanted to add there, Jean Bart, he was another pirate that went into, from the Caribbean, Panama, to attack these Native Americans. Black Bart, was a rum runner. He was a rum drinker. He went to Jamaica. He went to Port-au-Principe. He went to Kingston. He was in Negril. He was where the Rastafarians like Bob Marley are now. He was also in Haiti. He was also in Nassau, Grand Bahama. He was a pirate. Arr, but not like that. Remember, Black Bart. And so was, and all of them. Maybe Blackbeard was in Panama. I knew he was in Panama, Blackbeard, but he certainly was. Other places where they were first, and then after that, the pirates went to Africa. They went to Cape Coast Castle in Ghana in Western Africa to get these slaves, maroon them back to Jamaica, to the Caribbean, black slave rum runners. So they traded. So Indians, others included further south than that, were from Brazil, South America. They lived in Rio de Janeiro, where the Olympics were. They lived there. They roamed those beaches. You had the Arawaks. Mostly they were of Arawak descendants. In the Orinoco River, you have jungle tribes. You have Garifuna people of Garifuna descendants. You had Sir Walter Raleigh actually explored that river at one point. He went in there. And so, they're mostly black slaves. And you had the Exuma Indians. You have all these tropicals Indians, the Cayuse. No, they were in the U.S. But anyway, okay, now we're back to the United States. Okay, I was giving the history of, and then there were Nicaragua and Costa Rica, Brazil, Belize, Panama, Venezuela, and all these, Chile, Peru, Bolivia. They were all there. They were different tribes, and they were third world. They ate ants, they ate bugs, they ate all this stuff. And so, back to what I was saying was, let's talk about the totems. Native American women had owls. Native Americans, too, had owls on their totem poles. They had hawks. They had raptors. They had skunks. They had raccoons. They had squirrels, chipmunks, skunks. Native American totem poles had beavers, eagles. They had all of these totems of the animals represented to each tribe something in spirit, spiritual meanings. Owl meaning birds of prey or prayer. Bears means bear in totem symbol means in the totem pole. Eagles, they all mean something. Bears means spirit. They mean bears mean strong, courageous, muscular. That was a totem in bears, in bear tribes. Let me tell you some more tribes. The Pawnees, the Catawbas, the Coreys, they were down at the Emerald Isle area, Moorhead area. You had the Calusas, which were in Cape Coral, Captiva, Sanibel, the Shell Indians, I talked about them. You had the Mobile Bay, the mound builders. You had prehistoric Indians, which hunted mammoths, woolly mammoths, by the way. Native Americans in prehistory hunted mammoths. And then you had the Dakotas, Sioux. You had the Lenni Lenape. That was another one. The Ojibwa. The Ottawa Indians. You had the Seminoles, the Cheyennes. You had the Saponi Indians. You had the Saponi. You had the Huape. You had the Lenape. I said that. You had the Hopi, Kiowa. You had the Tlingit, Athabascans. You had the Chumash. You had the Massasoit. You had the Pamunkeys. You had all these tribes, federally recognized tribes. You still have some of them. The Lumbees, the Yamasees, the Wakamas, the Cheraws, the Wataugas. You had the Pueblos, the Navajos, the Anasazis, the Utes, the Pima Indians. They were in Arizona. They lived in the desert. The Pimas were encountered by the Spanish. They were a part of the Pimas. Okay, Indians in Virginia were, let's talk about Virginia now. Virginia had Thomas Jefferson, George Washington. The Shawnees actually encountered George Washington. George Washington was before he became president, he was general secretary. Thomas Jefferson, Alexander Hamilton, as in the play, who was born in the Caribbean, who was secretary, encountered the Shawnees too. The Shawnee Indians were also a part of Benjamin Franklin in Philadelphia, and Thomas Edison encountered them too. So the Shawnee people were all up in the northern part of America, maybe in Philadelphia too. Philadelphia was once, in 1776, where the Declaration of Independence was written, and Yorktown, Virginia is where George Washington was seized. And so the Native Americans encountered them too. And in the War of 1812, there was another pirate called John Lafitte from France, which he invaded Bacteria Bay, yes, Acadia, France, New Orleans, and Corpus Christi, Texas. He was a pirate, but he wasn't like the early pirates that encountered the Indians. But he encountered Indians too, but that was during the War of 1812. Thomas Jefferson was president during that time. And in New Orleans, when you think of New Orleans, you think of Zydeco music, you think of jazz music, you think of men with cowboy hats, and our accordions and washboards with cowboy hats and Zydeco music, and you think of Lafayette, Louisiana, you think of even people with jazz saxophones with hats, cowboy hats too. Yes, sometimes in New Orleans. But no, but yeah, jazz, piano, jazz, Louis Armstrong, all that. But no, New Orleans had Native Americans in Arcadia, which came from French Canada, but Thomas Jefferson was a part of it in the Mississippi region. So other Native Americans included, I named not all of them, but quite a few of them. You had in Maine. Maine was a French and English-Irish territory, and Maine had countryside, you had shores, you had some Indians up there north of Connecticut. And Queen Anne's War from 1711 to 1718, although North Carolina, Blackbeard and all that, Governor Charles Eden played a role in that. Queen Anne's War was during the Victorian era, and it happened in Connecticut, Deerfield, Connecticut. And Native Americans did in fact play a role in that too in Rhode Island. So, Native Americans also had other tribes included the Caddo Indians, the Caddoan, I named a lot of them. So, in Texas, you had the Comanches, you had Geronimo, I've named them all, and yes, Coco Peely, the flute player in Arizona, was in San Antonio. He was a myth. He was a flute player, part of the Navajo community, and he played a flute, but he's not real. Legend has it he's in Sedona, Arizona. Say he's real, but he's not. And you had the Mandan Indians. The Mandans were sort of the middle out west. Mandans still have their place. They're not really Sioux, they're not Navajo, they're not Comanche, but they're sort of in between. But they're in Colorado too. And the Mandans are a tribe that had European ancestry, sort of, but not really. They speak Spanish, sort of, but they're English, but they go, yeah, they live in teepees, they live on reservations, etc. So, yeah, I don't know, I've named a lot of Indians. Alright, well, I guess that's the end. That's all I know I can remember off the top of my head about Native American tribes in the United States and America and in the Americas, Amerindians. I hope you enjoyed it.